The cosmos trembled as two cosmic titans collided. Darkseid, the Lord of Apokolips, and Galactus, the Devourer of Worlds, were drawn into an inevitable confrontation, one that threatened to reshape the very fabric of existence itself. The air around them crackled with energy, as the forces of destruction were unleashed with such force that it seemed as though reality itself might shatter under the weight of their cosmic battle. Darkseid stood firm in the heart of the conflict, the very embodiment of will and order. His Omega beam sliced through the void, tearing apart the very space in their path. The beams, red as blood, streaked across the sky, scorching the heavens themselves. Galactus, though enormous, a being of immeasurable power and hunger, absorbed the beams with his vast cosmic energy, warping the very essence of the universe around him. Despite his immense size, Galactus was not invulnerable. Each strike from Darkseid pushed him to his limits, his energy fields flickering and crackling as they absorbed the destructive power. The planet on which their battle raged began to buckle and tremble under the weight of their power. Mountains cracked and crumbled, oceans boiled, and the very atmosphere quaked. The planet itself was dying, its fate sealed by the unrelenting conflict between these two cosmic entities. Darkseid's focus was unshaken as he pressed forward with his relentless assault. He was not merely fighting for victory. He was imposing his will on the very cosmos, reshaping reality to suit his vision. His Omega effect was his ultimate weapon, a force so powerful that it could annihilate anything in its path. Galactus, on the other hand, was a being defined by his insatiable hunger. He fed on planets, on the energy of entire civilizations. The power of a world, the life force that sustained it, was his sustenance. Yet, he was not without purpose. His existence was driven by a need far greater than mere consumption. He was a force of nature, a necessary part of the cosmic balance. But even a being of such magnitude could not escape the force of Darkseid's will. Galactus felt the sting of the Omega beams, the energy cutting deep into his form, threatening to unravel him at the molecular level. For a moment, the battle seemed to tilt in Darkseid's favor. The Omega beam struck Galactus with pinpoint precision, searing through his cosmic defenses. The great Devourer howled in pain, his energy reserves flickering. But even as the energy from Darkseid's attack coursed through him, Galactus' hunger grew. It was insatiable, and it was this hunger that would ultimately drive him to continue. He absorbed the energy of the planet beneath him, feeding off its very core. His size increased, his power surging as he tapped into the planet's energy, pushing Darkseid back with a cosmic shockwave. The clash between them was no longer just a battle of strength. It was a struggle for survival. The planet itself seemed to suffer under the immense strain of their powers, the ground cracking beneath their feet, and the atmosphere rippling with energy. Darkseid could feel the energy of the planet slipping away, drawn into Galactus' vast form. His patience was wearing thin. He would not allow this Devourer of Worlds to claim victory. As Galactus fed, Darkseid calculated his next move. He would not rely on brute strength alone. Instead, he would tap into the deepest reserves of his power. The Omega effect was not just a weapon of destruction. It was a tool that could manipulate the very fabric of existence. Darkseid reached deep into the well of the Omega force, his body glowing with the dark energy. With a single motion, he unleashed an immense Omega wave, a pulse of pure energy that expanded across the planet, erasing everything in its path. The blast struck Galactus head-on, pushing the Devourer of Worlds to his limits. Galactus' cosmic shields flared with intensity, desperately attempting to absorb the incoming energy. But even as the Omega wave coursed through him, the force was too much. The energy surged into the very core of Galactus, destabilizing his form. For a brief moment, he faltered. His form flickered, threatening to unravel. Darkseid could see it. Galactus was vulnerable. But the Devourer of Worlds was not one to be defeated so easily. In a desperate bid to survive, Galactus began to draw more energy from the planet's core. The planet was dying, its life force being drained to feed Galactus' unending hunger. Yet even as he grew in power, he was not prepared for what was coming next. Darkseid, seeing his opportunity, gathered his strength for a final strike. He tapped into the anti-life equation, a force capable of overriding free will and imposing absolute control. The equation did not just affect the minds of beings, it could erase the very essence of existence itself. With the equation in his grasp, Darkseid unleashed it in full force, targeting not just Galactus' mind, but the very fabric of the universe that sustained him. The result was catastrophic. The planet beneath them buckled under the strain, its energy collapsing into itself. Galactus, struggling to feed on the remaining energy, found himself cut off from his power source. For a brief moment, he was left powerless. His form flickered, unstable, as the anti-life equation took hold. The world around them began to crumble. Oceans vanished, continents fell into the abyss, and the sky itself seemed to collapse. Galactus, weakened and disoriented, retreated into the vastness of space, his hunger momentarily sated, but his power significantly diminished. He was not destroyed, but he was no longer the cosmic titan he had been. Darkseid stood alone amidst the ruins of the planet. The battle had ended, but it was clear that this conflict would not be the last. Galactus would return, driven by his insatiable hunger. Darkseid, too, would continue his quest for dominion over the cosmos. But for now, the universe was his to control. The Devourer of Worlds had been forced into retreat, and the Lord of Apokolips stood victorious, though the price had been high. The aftermath of their battle would leave its mark on the cosmos. The planet was gone, its energy consumed, its existence erased. But Darkseid had won. The universe, for a fleeting moment, was under his control. Yet, he knew the hunger of Galactus would one day bring him back, and the cycle of their eternal battle would continue. As the echoes of their conflict faded into the silence of space, Darkseid remained vigilant, knowing that the fight for the universe was far from over. The cosmic balance had shifted, but the forces of destruction and hunger were always waiting, always ready to strike again. As the echoes of the cosmic clash faded into the emptiness, Darkseid stood in the aftermath, his presence still lingering like a storm cloud in the void. The battlefield, once a vibrant planet, was now nothing more than a shattered husk. The energy from the battle had altered the very fabric of space, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. The remnants of the world they had fought over drifted in a slow, spiraling pattern, broken and lifeless. Darkseid's eyes burned with the aftermath of his victory, but there was no satisfaction in it. He knew that this was just a pause, not an end. Galactus had retreated, but Darkseid was certain the Devourer of Worlds would return. Galactus, a force driven by an insatiable hunger, was not one to stay down for long. The very nature of his being, his ceaseless need to consume, meant that he would always seek new worlds to devour, new sources of power to feed upon. Darkseid understood this hunger, for it mirrored his own unyielding desire to dominate, to control everything he set his gaze upon. But where Darkseid sought to impose order, Galactus sought only consumption. Their motives had clashed violently, and though Darkseid had emerged victorious for now, the price of that victory was unclear. The universe had been changed, but whether it was for the better or worse remained to be seen. The battle between them was not just one of strength, but of ideologies, control versus destruction. Darkseid could feel Galactus' energy signature flickering in the far reaches of space. It was faint, but it was there, an indication that the Devourer was not done. Darkseid's Omega beams could track him, but it would take time. The pause in their conflict was temporary. There was still much work to be done to ensure that no force, no being, could ever challenge his will again. His victory, though complete for now, had been a warning to Galactus, a reminder that even the mightiest of cosmic entities were not immune to Darkseid's relentless will. Yet, deep in his thoughts, Darkseid could not ignore the truth. Galactus was a force of nature, He could not be easily eliminated. As long as there were worlds to consume, as long as hunger burned within him, Galactus would return. It was not a question of if, but when. And when that time came, Darkseid would be ready. Darkseid turned his gaze once more to the fragments of the planet, his mind already calculating the next steps. The universe was in turmoil, and it would remain so until he brought it under his complete control. But Galactus' hunger was an unpredictable factor, one that would always threaten to upset the balance. Darkseid's Omega Force could do much, but it could not control everything. The battle might have ended in his favor, but the war was far from over.